Hi, everyone. I'm Hindi from Great Paws and All. And today we are speaking with one of my Facebook group members, Heather. We're going to hear about her experiences caring for senior dogs. And I just want to let sometimes the topic gets a little heavy. So just be warned, there's no timestamps on this one, but just know like we're talking about loss and quality of life. So it can be a little difficult, but I still think it's an important conversation. So just bear that in mind. So Heather, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Quite some time ago, I posted in my group asking if any senior dog parents wanted to come on and just chat about their life caring for a senior dog in the middle of everything else they have going on. And I like these conversations because I think it helps people feel less alone and they realize that other people are going through the same or similar situations. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm happy to help and hopefully give other people advice that gives them peace as well.
So I put together some questions. We don't have to stick to them, but just kind of guide us and, say whatever you want to say. We're just having a conversation. So I know you said that you have a mix of ages in your home. I think you have dogs and cats. Do you
I
have dogs
do.
and cats?
Right.
So there's like a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old and a 5 and a 2. So how does that work, especially with senior dogs? Are they okay with the younger ones? How is that going?
So my dogs are 14, 12, 5, and 2. Got that, I think, right on. Um, I feel like overall with having like the mix of ages, it's really good as long as you get the younger pets before the seniors become like super seniors. I think once they become, kind of that last phase of their senior life, it can be quite jarring for them to have a new energetic little puppy come into their world. But I think as long as you do it before they kind of hit that phase, that it can be very beneficial for them. Um, my 14-year-old dog and my 5-year-old dog are particularly very close. I kind of say that the 14-year-old is a female, the 5-year-old's a male, and I kind of say that she mothered him because we got him as a 12-week-old puppy. So he came into her life when she was about 9. So she still had lots of energy and um, kind of, I guess, in a sense, trained him to be a good dog. He's probably the best dog we've ever had as far as temperament and behavior. He's actually a pit bull mix.
Mm,
I've had about 10 dogs over the course of my adult life so far, and he's by far the most good natured. The only problem is he's about 80 pounds, and my senior dog, that's 14, is about 40 pounds. So he's twice her size. And so that's the
mm,
only thing that I have to really watch out for is sometimes he gets really playful and wants to play with her, and having somebody jump on you that's twice your weight is not great for your little senior joints. So I do have to kind of rein him in every now and then, but he's pretty good because um she's not afraid to put dogs in their place, but she's not aggressive either. So she
mm.
trained him well from when he was young. Um, and then there's times like when now she's on a lot of medications, and sometimes she'll figure me out and realize that I'm putting medications in the peanut butter or whatever, and she gets
Right.
a little resistant to it. And a great trick I have is I just get him to sit by me and I feed him some, and then she's like, "What is he getting? I want that too." And then I'll
Oh,
feed her some.
smart.
So it really helps her out with like seeing, oh, he's behaving this way, so I should too, because that looks exciting and looks like something fun to do. Um, so yeah,
That's
and then the
very
the
cool.
2-year-old dog is a little Shih Tzu mix. Um, and so he loves to lick. He licks her all the time, and
Mm,
that kind of annoys her sometimes. But again, I just try to shush him away. And like when we aren't at home, the 2 and 5-year-old dogs are crated, and she has free roam. So she gets a break then, and then at night she gets to go sleep in my teenage son's room. So she gets a nice full night break with her own space overnight as well.
that's amazing because I know there are, I read like quite a few senior dog parents think about getting another dog and they're thinking about getting a puppy because they feel like it will keep their older dog young.
Hmm.
But that's such good advice to it doesn't matter if they're older, but just not too old where they're having mobility issues or
Yeah.
they'll become really annoying.
Yeah, like I still had I've lost four seniors before the group I have now. And they were a 13-year-old, 14-year-old, and two 16-year-olds when they
Oh,
passed.
wow.
And they all passed within 2 years of each other because I didn't think that through when I got them, and I got them kind of close in age together, and then didn't think about the fact that I would also unfortunately lose them all close together, which was a very difficult phase to go through. But the last one of that group, she was 14 actually when I got Charlie, our 5-year-old. And she did enjoy playing with him, but she went downhill right after. And I
Mm,
always, it may or may not have happened that way regardless, but I do worry that like the energy that he brought in with him was too much for her. Um, and so like after that experience, that's really what I've always thought to myself, like I'm going to be very careful about bringing in any new pets once my very senior pets hit that age because
right,
I don't want it to kind of just be the tipping point for them.
right. That's very thoughtful, actually, to do that.
Mhm.
So, do you find the younger ones are keeping her younger, or I
Yeah,
don't
I think
really
so.
see?
So if you notice, I kind of skipped over my 12-year-old dog. That's my beagle, and she does not get along with the 14-year-old. They
Oh,
have decided they do not like each other. They
oh,
both individually get along with the younger two dogs, but I just have to rotate the 14 and 12-year-old when I take them outside and things like that
wow.
because they got in a really bad fight about 5 years ago, and
Wow.
ever since then, especially my beagle, tries to go after the lab mix, the 14-year-old. So I just have to keep them separate and just rotate them outside. Um, but I'm sorry, I think the question you asked was like, do they
No,
keep
it's
them
fine. Like
younger?
that. No, no, it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
you
like, because
manage
it
the
kind of works
environment.
for both of them in a way that when they're with the younger two, when they go outside, they get so excited, want to go chase the squirrels at the fence, and it really perks up my seniors when they're with them, because I think it's things that at least my 14-year-old dog, I don't think she would notice that, like the squirrel at the fence, because her vision's not as great. But when she
Okay.
sees her 5-year-old buddy get excited, she's like, "What are we gonna chase?" And she wants
Oh,
to
that's
go
amazing.
follow him and see what they're getting into. So she definitely, um, I think, has more energy because of him,
Oh, that's
especially.
wonderful.
Yeah.
So I know you were saying to me when we were kind of going back and forth that well, with all the seniors you've had, you have a lot of experience with so many different health issues.
Hmm.
Um, did any of them feel especially challenging for you? I mean, they all have their own challenges,
They all
but
felt different, and for completely different reasons. So the first dog I lost, he was 16 when he passed, and he did great until he was about 14 and a half. Like you couldn't even tell he was in his senior years. He was playful and would run around the yard. And around 14 and a half to when he ultimately passed a little over 16 years old, he developed degenerative myelopathy.
mm,
So that's where they can't feel their back end, like the nerves in their back end start to die, and it slowly moves like up their body. So it starts on their feet, goes through their legs, their hips, and moves up. And that was hard just because it was the first truly like senior aging thing I had to deal with. Um, and it was a lot of hands-on because the last 6 months, he got to the point where he couldn't use his back legs at all. And it's a very hard thing to watch your pet go through. But at the same time, the benefit of that particular disease is they don't feel a lot of pain usually because their nerves are dying.
hmm.
And so for him, we were able to get him a little wheelchair for his back half. And once he got used to that, he wanted to go on walks and he wanted to go out and play again. And he kind of had a new lease on life for like the last 6 months. And then we're still not really sure what happened at the very end, why he like suddenly took a turn, but he ultimately did around 16, and we had to make the decision to let him go. But for that last 6 months, it was a lot of work, for me. And I had young children at the time too, on top of that. So, but because he couldn't get up himself, multiple times a day, I was loading him up in his wheelchair and helping him go outside, because he couldn't rest in his wheelchair. So I had to like constantly take him in and out of it. and change his bedding constantly because he had lost bowel and urine
Right.
control at the end. And again, it was a lot of care, and if he had been in pain, I would have made a decision sooner. But talking with his vets and everything, we decided he wasn't suffering, wasn't in pain. It was just a lot of work for me at the end. Um, so that one was hard in that way. Um, the second one I lost, she was actually only 13. It was a miniature Dachshund, and she had a heart tumor that we didn't know about until it
Oh,
got really
wow.
bad. Like one day I went to pick her up and I realized she was struggling to breathe. And by the end of the week, we had to make the decision to let her go because it was, you know, her quality of life just went downhill and there was no way to remedy it for her. Um, so in It might sound weird, but in some ways that one was not quite as difficult because kind of the decision was completely out of my hands. Like she went from
Yeah.
being completely fine to like, okay, she's really suffering and we have to make this decision and there's nothing we can do about it. Talking to all the vets, nothing even financially that we could spend all the money in the world and save her like she was there was no way to do it.
Those are
Um,
easier decisions. I mean,
right.
no
So in some
decision is
way,
easy, but there's like nothing you can do. So
right, like
that's your
knowing that,
decision.
that there was absolutely nothing I could do definitely took the weight off of my shoulders with that one. Um, the third one was my heart dog. I feel like everybody kind of has that at some point in their life, though
Yeah.
their soul pet.
Yeah.
And so that one was really difficult for me. And looking back, I can admit to myself that I probably held on to that one a little bit too long. And he was almost 17, and by the end he had so many things
Mm,
medically wrong with him, that he was living for me, and I know that. And it finally got to the point where he wasn't eating and wasn't did was sleeping all day long, and we knew he had kidney disease, he had heart disease, he had cancer, like he had
oh,
all the things. And
yeah.
so it took me a while to be okay with making that final decision for him. But he was also making it for himself at the same time too.
Yeah.
Um, and then my fourth one was right after him, so it was very hard because it was only a few months later. And she she stopped eating as well. She had severe arthritis. She had some dental disease. And then the final thing we found out about her, she had a tumor in her lungs. And so she was starting to have very slight breathing problems too. And she's the one still looking back. I know I shouldn't, and I don't think anybody should, but I have regrets about, maybe I let go too soon. But I was so fatigued after the three other losses that I had just had, and knowing that like the end result was inevitable, and I had already lived that, and I knew like she was 14 at the time, you know, and I know looking back, even best case scenario, she would have made it 6 more months max, absolutely
Mm.
max, probably. Um, and I spent a whole weekend giving her the best weekend ever. I took her everywhere with me and the kids. We went to a farm, we went to trails, and then we decided to let her go before her illnesses got worse. And again, at that point, she already was barely eating, so I knew that she had already kind of told me that she was done. But it was hard when she was the one that like out of my other three, they really couldn't do anything. Whereas she could still take short walks and do things like that. So it was very hard to make that decision for her. But I knew that even though she was doing those things, she was already in a lot of pain and very uncomfortable. So,
That's why quality of life, again, like if it's a really terrible blood test, there's nothing you can do, which is how a lot of my decisions were made.
mhm.
And your dog that had like a heart tumor, it's almost like, okay, you know how you have to make the decision. But when it comes to quality of life where you really don't have to make it today, you
Yeah,
can wait another week maybe,
that's
you
the
know,
hardest one. It's
or
the hardest one for
you
me.
could have also done it 2 weeks ago. Those
Mhm.
are because also, you know, many people think, well, my dog is eating. Dogs can eat until the last second, so that's not really a good judge. And I learned a lot by speaking to a hospice vet recently, and it was very, very fascinating when you talk about quality of life and also like quality of life could be, what if your dog used to love to go hiking and now they can't? Well, maybe their quality of life isn't good. So there's so many factors that makes it very difficult, which is why I'm now like an advocate for hospice vets to help
Yeah.
you.
I had a vet give me some really good advice about deciding end of quality of life.
Okay.
Um, and it's something like now having two dogs enter this phase again, I still have to constantly remind myself of it because it's still difficult. You still get
Yeah.
very emotionally attached, and I have PTSD from losing four dogs already.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it's very, very sound advice, and there's three different things I think about when I'm considering end of life, quality of life. This vet told me before your pet gets too far, which I've already done with my dog Molly, that's 14. Think about three things that make them them. Like
Right.
what three things do they absolutely love? She loves chasing her ball. She still does that. She'll chase her ball all day. She loves if I go in the yard and throw the ball for her. She still does that. I mean, lives for it. Unlike any other dog I've ever had. She loves getting like head scratches where she just like noses you and just sticks her head in your lap until you scratch her head. Um, she still gets very excited about going on walks. Like she goes
Hmm.
slow, but she gets very excited and bouncy and is excited to go on her walks. So those are kind of like the three things that just give her lots of joy in life and make
Right.
her. And the vet told me one time, pick three things, and it's going to look different for every dog, but pick three things before they get bad of what makes them them. And once two of those three things are gone, it's probably time. If two of those three things they don't ever want to do anymore, and that's just it's not present anymore,
Hmm.
then that's a good sign that it's time. Another thing, and we mentioned it like eating. Yes, some dogs will eat to the end, but many don't. In my experience, most of my dogs that live long enough, like the two that weren't emergency decisions that I had to make,
Mm.
um, did not want to eat. And so I had another vet tell me if they'll go 48 hours, 2 days, and they don't want to eat anything. And she said treats do count. If they want to eat treats, you can keep
Hmm.
going. If they don't want to eat anything, then it's their way of telling you they're done.
Right.
And again, I don't think that's true for every single dog, because you do have to kind of take it as a whole picture. But for people like me that are very kind of like, I need concrete ways to measure,
Yes.
I like that thought process. Um, and then the third thing is, and I've seen a lot of this happen to me actually with my dog Sydney, the last one I lost. Um, and I see it a lot on like the senior dog page. If it's to the point where you have to ask other people if it's time, not
Right.
yourself.
Right.
Because there's times where like my dog gets sick and I'm like, oh no, is it time? And then they rebound and they're fine. But if it's to the point that like you really question it to the point you want to go on social media or you want to call your friends and be like, am I wrong to do this? Is it time? It probably is. Because
Yes.
what you're seeking is validation that you are not making the wrong choice. And if it's to the point that you are seeking validation from other people to make that decision, then it's probably in your heart what the answer is.
Yes. And I'm so glad you brought that up because in the group, as you're talking about, I've seen that a lot. And you don't really know. You can only judge based on what they write. And I often read their scenarios and I'm like, it is way past time. And what I say to them is read this as though someone else wrote it.
Right.
And what would you say to them?
It's easy because I've been in that slide two or three times, like that senior slide,
Yeah.
um, with them. Again, I think my miniature Dotson that had the heart tumor, she was very quick, but really the other three all kind of had a slide into it.
Yeah.
And it's easy to like reestablish things as a new normal when you see it day
Yes,
after day.
exactly.
Um, Very easy to do. And I still worry about doing it myself. Um, it's very helpful now that I have my children are older, and especially my oldest, he's 15, and he's a very active participant in caring for the pets and way more rational than I am.
Hmm.
So like when I was really stressing, because my 14-year-old just had a bit of some health issues that she's doing well now, but it was a bit of a bump in the road, and I was really upset about it. And my 15-year-old was like, "Mom, this is fine. Like she's not like suffering right now, like she's
Yeah,
just having a little bit of a health issue. Like it'll be okay." Um, and then I think the same thing will happen when it is time, where my husband's usually really good with it, with being like, I think you know what the right choice is here.
yeah,
So having some family members here too that are old enough to help make those decisions, I think will help going forward too. That because before I often put all that weight on my shoulders, and it shouldn't have to be that way if you have close family members or friends that can, support you as well.
definitely. I do like what you said about things become like a new normal.
Yeah. And that's why like my vet said, like pick those three things before your pet starts to really decline. Like right at the beginning of like, they can have declined a little. Like my dog Molly, she's not a spring chicken anymore, but she's still by all normal measures healthy, and happy. And so it's like now's the time to pick those things, not once she starts to slide. Don't move the
Right,
goalpost as your
right.
pet changes. Like pick those things now, um, and keep them in mind as your pet ages. Don't change them as they age.
I love that. I've never heard anyone say that. I've certainly
Mhm.
never heard any of my vets say that. And I think I'm glad you mentioned it because I think it's such a great way to judge.
Yeah, it's
Um,
it's helped me a lot.
yeah, I can imagine. So
Mhm.
if we talk about anticipatory grief, which I know we've touched on like a lot of these topics that we're going to talk about, but how does it show up for you? I mean, you've had a lot of experience with loss,
Mhm.
as many of us have, and we know it never gets easier for sure. But does the way you experience anticipatory grief, has that changed because you have the experience?
That's definitely an area I still struggle in. And I don't feel like I should be giving advice to anybody on it when I haven't figured it out myself yet. Because for me, it that part doesn't get easier. The after part does. I've mastered after it happens of how to handle that. But the anticipatory grief for me is really, really difficult to deal with, especially after having gone through it so many times. So now it's like, now I know. Now I have flashbacks when I see a certain illness in a certain dog, and I'm like, oh, this other dog had that. And then the end happened right afterwards. Like my
Right.
dog Molly, the 14-year-old, she just had a vestibular episode,
Okay.
which is kind of like dog vertigo. And my dog Sydney, that I also lost at 14, had an episode of that too. And she recovered, but then it was only a few months after that that we found the tumor, and I had to let her go. Just I think she had a vestibular episode in July or August, and we had to let her go in October. So when Molly got that, it was very, very triggering for me. And there's nothing I
Right.
can like explain to myself in my own brain of how to say, like, just because it happened this way before does not mean that it'll happen this way again. But
Right.
it was very triggering for me, and something that I had to um really kind of sit with. And I do have therapy, and I talked to the therapist about it, and I was just like, I need help processing this,
No,
because I know
absolutely.
what the trigger is. The trigger is that, this has happened before, and my brain is like, this happened before, it'll happen again. But it doesn't mean that way. Every dog's senior journey looks different.
Yeah.
And that's something important to remember too if you're going through it multiple times. Like all four of the ones I've experienced so far are very different. The current one I have is different than the other ones I had. So they're all different. You just don't know, and you have to kind of just live in the day with them. And that's been my new kind of cliche, corny motto for myself, is today is a good day. And
Mm,
I try to just repeat that to myself every time I kind of feel a little bit down in the dumps about, watching my pet's age. Like, but today is a good day. So like lately I'll be outside with my dog Molly. I'll throw her a ball. She'll get excited and go run after it. She comes back and I scratch her head and I say, today is a good day.
Oh, that's amazing.
Um, because it is, today is good.
It
And
is.
she's just about recovered from her vestibular. She still has a little head tilt,
Right.
but she's not dizzy anymore and
Oh,
she's
good.
she's playful again and she's doing all the normal things she should be doing. Um, And so I'm like, today is a good day. We had a little bump, but today is a good day. I don't know what tomorrow, next week, or next month will hold, but today is a good day. And I have to just live in that with
Th-
her.
The
So,
truth is, we should all put that on our bathroom mirrors
yeah.
for ourselves. Today's a good day. I think I'm going to do that. I love that. I really love
Yeah.
that. I wanted to talk about decision making, even though we've kind of touched on that already with the three signs your vet suggested you look out for. But
Mhm.
how do you navigate that? I read not that long ago, and I thought this was very interesting. Like when it comes to making decisions, a lot of it also should depend, although again, I've never heard of that say this to me, depends on like your thought process would be different depending on what condition they're dealing with. Like for example, if one vet, like a hospice vet, was talking about um, like heart failure. So it doesn't mean there's anything like they're still okay now, but what does heart failure look like? And could it change suddenly? And is it something that you could be like they could literally turn suddenly and they can't breathe and you're rushing to the emergency vet in the middle of the night, which would help you make another decision. Whereas if they had like kidney disease, let's say, that maybe it could be managed with diet, or you
Mhm.
see things change more gradually. It's not typically something that's an emergency unless you're not keeping an eye on it. So has that come into your decision-making process?
Yeah. And like, I think that's why I made the decision with my last senior, Sydney, um, that I told you I kind of regretted, but at the same time, knowing she had a lung tumor, I was about to go on a trip soon, and I was like, I don't know if this could get really bad very
Right.
quickly when I'm not here. And I know she's already suffering. She's not having amazing quality of life right now. So I'd rather give her an amazing weekend and then, let her go. Whereas like my several of my other dogs, and the same thing as far as like what happened with Sydney happened with Sadie. I had all S named dogs, if you haven't figured that out yet in my first round. Um, Sadie's the one that had the heart tumor, and I knew she was going downhill very fast. And I was even worried the last night we had her home that she would make it through the night. And, I didn't want her to suffer. So we got her in as quick as we could for her. Um, Whereas Spanky and Snoopy, the other two, Spanky's the degenerative myelopathy one, and then Snoopy was my heart dog that had a lot of things. They didn't really have things that were like degenerative myelopathy is not like a immediate death sentence, like it can be
Right.
managed with care. And again, like he
Right.
wasn't suffering, even though he couldn't use his back legs, he seemed happy outside of that. Um, and then Snoopy's main issue, he had a lot of things. He did have some heart issues, but his heart was not to the point that that was what was going to take him. It was his kidneys and some possible cancer involvement.
Mhm.
Um, so he was not like on the verge of having some massive medical crisis that would cause him to be in massive amounts of pain. But it was a very slow, agonizing end that I ultimately had to decide to end for him, so he didn't keep having to have to keep going through it. So it does differ a lot. And I do worry about like my current dog, Molly. She has arthritis is the main consistent issue we've had to deal with. And I don't have an answer yet for to how to make a call for that kind of thing because arthritis is not
Right.
a death sentence. It can be a very painful one. Um, and her quality of life can end up going to almost nothing if the arthritis continues to be the only thing that progresses with her. And
Right.
so that's another reason why it's important to like kind of pick those.
For
especially with
sure.
her, I think picking those three things she loves to do. And if her arthritis gets to the point where she can't chase her ball, which is the greatest thing in her world,
Yeah.
and she doesn't want to come up and get scratches like she does, nuzzle me and stuff like that. And if
Yeah.
she doesn't want, have any desire to go on a walk, she's miserable.
Yeah.
Like that's her body telling me that she's miserable and her body's done. So I think for her in particular, it's important to keep those types of, or in dogs like her, um, to keep that pick three things in mind that make them them, and keep an eye out for those.
How's her, are you managing her arthritis at all? Like,
Yeah,
do you
she's
find,
on Galliprant and gabapentin.
oh,
Um, which I'm going to come back to that because I have something I wanted to say about that. And we just did a round of Adequan injections, which made a
oh,
huge difference for
yes,
her.
I've
I
heard that.
I highly, based on my experience,
I've
I
heard
highly
that.
recommend it. Now, my vet did tell me that for about 80% of dogs, it works fantastic. And then there's about 20% that it just doesn't do anything for. But they said the side effects of it are very minimal, if at all. They said they hardly ever see any side effects. It is pricey, but you do like a 4-week course, and then you just wait it out until they need it again, and then you do another 4-week course. That's what the company recommended because I actually called them to get
Oh,
their
right.
direct recommendation. Um, and the vet agreed with me. Some vets do it a little bit different, but my
Have
vet
you
agreed with
tried
that
like
recommendation.
any kind of like laser therapy and acupuncture? Have you ever
We've
tried
done a
that?
little bit of laser therapy. She has extreme vet anxiety.
Oh,
So,
okay.
like the worst I've seen of any of my pets, her other issue is anxiety, but we have that well managed. She gets melatonin and the gabapentin help with that,
Oh, great. That's
except
great.
for when she goes to the vet. She
You're
gets
right.
very, very anxious at the vet,
Yeah.
to the point like last time I took her, she was slobbering and about to throw up.
Oh my
And
gosh.
our vet luckily works with us, and we just do her visits outside, so that helps somewhat. Or I just take her to a little shaded area outside, and he comes
Oh,
outside to meet
wonderful.
us. So that does help somewhat with the anxiety, but she still knows where she is and she still gets very, very anxious about it. So we decided a while back that acupuncture was not a good option
No,
for her
no.
because they need to be sitting still for a while and be okay with being poked and stuff at the vet.
Right.
Um, we've done a little bit of laser therapy, but again, I can tell it makes her very anxious. Um, so we do, so she's been on Galliprant for a while. Um, last May or June, she started um, panting and pacing and was just unsettled, and we couldn't figure it out. And I spent so much money on testing at the vet trying to figure out what was wrong. My vet even recommended that we go, um, or one of my vets recommended that if we wanted to really get answers, maybe we need to go see a neurologist. And I called about that, and that was going to be like $4,000
Oh
just
God.
for all the testing and
Yeah.
evaluation. And while we're on that, I just want to say it's okay to say no to things,
Yeah.
especially when they're senior pets, like I was like, so what if they found something? What am I going to
Yes,
realistically do?
exactly. I have done that.
Um,
I have
Especially
done
at
that.
that level, especially
Yeah.
$4,000 just to get her evaluated and tested.
And then
And then
what?
I'm sure if there was like a tumor in her brain, they'd want to do another 4 or 5 thousand. It's okay to say like, this is out of my um this just doesn't make sense, first of all, when they're already
Mhm.
that age. And then two, like, is that amount of money, say I spent $4,000, that's not going to solve anything. It's only going to give me answers. And so I decided very carefully after careful thought to decline that and to we decided to really just try to focus on her anxiety and her pain. And I had a friend that's a vet that told me, a lot of dogs manifest pain as anxiety.
Yeah.
When they have chronic pain, it looks like anxiety because they'll pant and pace, and it is like it's anticipatory pain. Like whether or not they're
Mm.
actively in pain at the moment, a lot of times they've experienced pain for so long that they are anticipating being in pain again soon.
Right.
And so a lot of times they said they found if they treat dogs, senior dogs that are showing symptoms of anxiety for the pain, the anxiety symptoms get much better.
Hmm.
And so we decided to treat those two things. And gabapentin is actually a really great medication for both of those things. It helps pain and anxiety. And then with my own research, I decided to add melatonin, but my vet supported it. Um, yeah, and we tested her thyroid. Her thyroid was a little bit low, and that can also influence anxiety and cognitive changes and stuff too.
Mm,
So she got on thyroxine. Um, and within we had to and we changed her food too. We changed it to Science Diet Cognitive and Mobility, which has a lot of good extra supplements in there as well. And by July or so, she was doing great. And from July until just recently, absolutely no issues, just fantastic. And then her arthritis started to flare a couple months ago, and that's when we had to try to figure out what else we could do. And we brought on the adequate injections, which
mm,
completely reversed all the like the slide she was starting to have and put her back to like
amazing.
that good playful level. Um, and then she had just coincidentally happened to have the vestibular episode right in the middle of us trying to like play with her pain regimen, and
Yeah.
figuring out what to do. So she had to deal with both those things at once, and that was pretty stressful for me, and I'm sure scary for her. But again, she's doing great now. Um, but I wanted to stay on the gabapentin. I was My vet recommended it, and I was really scared to do it because my dog Snoopy that had kidney disease, I had tried it on him, and it made him like comatose. Like
Yeah.
he could not get up. And I was like, I'm really afraid to give my other senior dog gabapentin, and I've heard many horror stories about it. Many
Mhm.
people will say similar things to that,
Yeah.
but it's been a miracle for her. And I'm not saying it will be for every dog. And I think that's something very important when you have multiple dogs or when you hear scary stories about certain medications, that it does not affect every dog the same way. And that it's better to give your dog a chance at feeling better and making a recovery from something than to just be too terrified of the side effects. And I do think starting as low as you can is ideal. So like with her gabapentin, I started her at just like 100 milligrams twice a
Hmm.
day and slowly increased it. Now she's on 300 twice a day. So it gave her body a little bit of chance to kind of adjust
Right.
to it. But that's just something that having as many senior dogs as I have that I have learned is that each medication affects every dog differently. And you got to remember that and also not let your past experiences with one medication influence how you're treating a different pet.
That is fantastic advice. Honestly, that's really, really good advice because you do tend to shy away from something that you've had a bad experience with, but
Yeah.
every dog is different
Hmm.
and how they also
And
how
their
like,
medical issues are different. Like one of the reasons
right.
that my dog Snoopy did not do well with it is he had kidney disease, and kidneys have to help process that. And so that's one reason that the gabapentin did not do well with him. But Molly has fantastic blood work. All her blood work looks absolutely perfect. So her kidneys are working, her liver is working, and so her body can process that just fine. And it works just like it's intended for her. And she's had no negative side effects that I've seen, and she's been on it for close to a year now. So um, just because it doesn't work for one doesn't mean it won't work for the other. And just
Absolutely.
because somebody says you're going to hear the worst case scenario stories of a lot of things. Um, and so it doesn't mean that just because one person had a bad experience with it that you will too, because the medication's there because it does work for a good portion of
Yeah.
animals. So
That's such great advice. Thank you for sharing that. So if we
mhm.
just kind of wind this down, and then of course we're going to talk about pet loss. Nobody wants to talk about that, but we've been through loss so many times. Do you think that your relationship with grief has changed over time or how you handle it? Because, I mean, but I know also, even from my own experience, I mean, grief is different for every pet that you lose. You don't
Yeah.
grieve in the same way. So have you found that to be true also? And have you found little tips or advice that you could offer that have helped you cope? Because you could experience
Um,
it 20 times. It doesn't get any easier, or maybe it does for some.
it doesn't get easier. I think it is different with every pet though, because there are some pets that I am closer to. Like
Yes, of
it's
course.
just a fact that having as many as I do, like my my heart dog Snoopy that I had was like my little soulmate dog, you know, like
Yeah.
he's the one reason I held on to him for so long is because I just didn't want that to end selfishly. Um, my soul pet now is actually one of my cats, and he's the 13-year-old cat. So I'm dreading that that's going to happen at some point too. But and that one probably will be harder on me than other losses. It is harder than others. But in my anticipatory grief, I haven't figured out a way to manage any better. It still is there, and it's still something I struggle with, and I put the weight of their care on my shoulders, and I know I don't have to do that, but you can't just tell me not to and me turn it off, you know. But afterwards, I have kind of developed a much better process of dealing with it. The first one was really hard because it was just a big shock, you know, like you have these pets that you love and you just when you first get them, you don't realize how quickly their lives go by, and then it
Mm.
happens the first time and you suddenly realize that. So, you know, the first time was really hard, and my oldest son was took it pretty hard too, and he was crying, and so I didn't want him to cry and be too upset, and so I started telling him stories about the dog. Um, just stories from his life of crazy things this dog did, because this dog got into a lot of trouble. And I remember one story I was telling him, I said, "Yeah, did I ever tell you about the time that Spanky scared himself with his own fart?" And my kid starts laughing. He's like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, we were just chilling there in the living room and he farted and he jumped up like an intruder was at the
Oh my
door."
gosh.
And he just started laughing and he was like, "Tell me more stories, tell me more
What a smart
stories."
idea.
And so we started, so then I just started going through my brain Rolodex and thinking about all the crazy stories that this dog did and the things he got into.
Oh,
Because especially with the first one, well, him and Snoopy, I'd gotten both of those before kids. So they were my like single life dogs, you know, and so I'd had a lot more adventures with them. Whereas like my dogs I have now, they get to go on some walks occasionally, but mostly they see the backyard and they play with the kids in the backyard, you know, like that's their
right.
life, although they're not complaining, they're having a good time. But um my first two went more places, you know, and so I had a lot of stories to tell about them and things that they did. And I realized in that process it really made us all heal a lot and to focus on all the, you know, all the good memories
Hmm.
because it's easy to get lost in the sadness when you lose a pet, but when you stop and think about, especially if you have a senior pet, like you've done a good job. Like you had a pet that has made it into the senior
Right.
years, like that you've been an amazing pet parent. You've given that pet a long, wonderful life, no matter what the situation is, to get them that far, you know? And to stop and just think about all the wonderful adventures and things you did and talk about them in that way. Like, not, I think it's hard because people don't want to talk about the end. And I do usually avoid talking about that until well after.
Yeah.
But just talking about when they were young and healthy. And it also, for me, because with all my dogs, I did have to make the decision myself to let them go. None of my dogs passed, you know, naturally. They are all clearly going downhill, but none of them passed completely. Focusing on all those good things, it also made me, that's what I was going to say. It also made me remember how far downhill they had gone at the end to
Oh,
give
right.
myself some
That's right.
peace with making the decision I had to make. When I'm talking about all these crazy things they did, I was like that, but that wasn't them at the end, you know, like,
Mm.
but that was them. Like all these stories I'm sharing were them.
Yeah.
And so it gives me peace in multiple ways to talk about it, like, you know, to just share stories about their life.
And other people just clam up and don't want to talk about them.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah, I've
seems
had several friends
healthy.
that have lost pets and then they just don't want to talk about it at all. And I'm like, well, just tell me stories about your pet. Tell me not the end, but tell me stories like what is something funny your pet did or a funny memory you have with your pet. And
Oh, that's
it will put a smile on your face
right.
remembering them instead of tears, you know.
Wow, that's
So
beautiful, actually. So my last question really is for people that have a senior dog for the first time. So everything is new. Do you have any just general advice about any part of the journey?
I think, I think in some ways, it feels kind of dark to say, but I think the end is inevitable. And unfortunately, when you take on the care and love of these animals, we also take on the weight of the fact that we will most likely outlive them. And kind of what I said a moment ago, if they're a senior pet, like you did your job, like you are a great owner and better than probably 90% of pet owners, like if you are to the point where you are looking up a video like this, or you're on a senior dog care page, or you're trying to figure out like what's the best course of care for my pet, like your pet won the jackpot already, and you've done everything,
You're right, actually. I
you
like
know,
that. Yeah.
for that pet. Um, and no matter what you do, the end result will be the same. One of the other things about end of life, a quote I heard somebody say at one point that I also remind myself when it's really at that moment is the last gift that you can give your pet is to take their pain and make it yours to think about too.
And enjoy the journey.
Yeah. And again, when you're in the midst of it and not quite to that last very end of life thing, just remember today is a good day.
Put that on your mirror, everybody.
Yeah.
Today is a good day.
Today is a good day.
Well, thank you so much, Heather. I'm so grateful. And you have amazing, amazing advice and lots of words of wisdom that I know people will benefit from.
Thank you.
You're fantastic. So I appreciate all the tips you've shared, and I'm going to encourage everyone to watch this. I know, some parts are not so easy, but believe me, this will definitely help. So thank you.
Yeah, and I
And
appreciate being part of your page too. That's also given me a lot of um, helpful advice and support through the years, and knowing that I'm not in this alone.
oh, thank you. I'm glad you feel that way. Yeah, it's a good group. So I'm going to put the link for that below because you should all join. And yeah, exactly. You're not alone in this. So
Mhm.
thank you so much. Thank you everyone for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Have a wonderful day, everybody.